Okay, this is my review of the Nightfly, 1982 release by Donald Fagen. Now, I have been and continue to be one of the #1 fans of the band Steely Dan that materialised at the beginning of the 70s and had, I think, 7 albums running through the 70s, all of which were 5-star. And Donald Fagen, of course, was half of the 2 members that were Steely Dan, the other being Walter Becker. Now, these 2 young men originate from New York City, but decided to defect to the West Coast, to Los Angeles, and that's where they got their break into recording music. Although they did, prior to getting a contract for Steely Dan, they were prodigious musicians, mainly contributing to jazz sort of numbers, but they had a pedigree, that was the main point. But in 1981 the band decided to separate. It wasn't so much a split, I think they just wanted a break, because they did reunite later down the track. But Fagen decided to get back in the studio, and he produced the Nightfly with Gary Katz. Gary Katz was also was the Steely Dan producer, and a number of musicians appeared on the Nightfly that had previously been on Steely Dan records. Steely Dan basically weren't really much of a band, they were just a duo with a collection of very multi-talented session musicians, and Nightfly continued that trend, but there was no Becker. Now, the work that was put out by Fagen had a slight different emphasis, because it was very much autobiographical, reflecting on his time as a young man, a teenager really, in the 50s, and a lot of the songs relate to what was happening in his life and what was happening in America at that time. So when we get to the lyrics on the track by track, you will notice that there are a number of events that symbolised really what was happening in the late 50s, early 60s in the United States. Now, I have to say that when this album hit my record player, because in those days I was in England and still a vinyl collector, it was on the turntable daily. And of course, the rise of MTV also enabled us to capture video music, and I also recall an early video on MTV of New Frontier. More about that a bit later. But anyway, this is by way of my intro into the Nightfly, and let's get on with the track by track. Track 1 then is IGY, which is an abbreviation of International Geophysical Year. I found that on the internet. So the first track then, on the Nightfly. There's a beautiful swinging jazz beat that enters the fray with the sleazy horns, and some great vocals from Fagen on this. It's really foot-tapping stuff, and it has a sort of aura of optimism about it. Much more uplifting than Gaucho, which was the last Steely Dan project that was completed a year or so before. It's the whole album, and this song as well, is about the fact that the future's in the air. It's probably mid-50s, around the time that Fagen was a young teenager, and he was full of optimism. The instrumentation is glued together so cohesively, and there's a synth blues harp played by Fagen on this, and this great line which sums it up from the chorus sang by the female singers. What a beautiful world this will be. What a glorious time to be free. Just epitomise the whole mood of this track and the album. Lyrically, it focuses on the American dream. It's the future vision, and it's bright. And the space race is also on people's lips, as this reflects the freedom that the US are bombarding us with in their sort of propaganda. Up next is Green Flower Street, much more up tempo this, with some nice jazz picking guitar. The keyboards are very jazz focused. I love Larry Carlton's guitar style, it has to be said, and there's a pinch of clavinet on here. It's pretty easy listening. It's a song about two cultures, I think, experiencing love in a drunken area that's violent. References to an Asian, possibly, but it's pretty standard fare. It may well have sort of references to the fact that following the end of the war with Japan, the fact that a relationship with an Asian would be frowned upon by the general public as totally unacceptable. Track 3 is Ruby Baby. This was written by the famous lyricists Lieber and Stoller. It's got a real jazz blues tempo and an extravagant chorus and a nice lead guitar intro with some intricate piano by Fagen and a couple of others. It oozes with smooch. The other pianists, apparently, two of them, actually played the same piano, one with the left hand and the other with the right, to get the original sound. And it's got party noises at the end, suggesting the atmosphere of joy. Lyrically, a simple love song, I think, and it may be a hooker involved, but there's only a slight hint of that in the last verse. Maxine's a slow bluesy ballad, a very clear guitar sound by Carlton again. The horns caress the mood, and there's a Michael Brecker solo on tenor sax that's absolutely breathtaking. It's another song about college romances, I think, and dreams of the future together. The first track on side 2 is New Frontier. I remember this one vividly because there was a really fancy little video to this. And the video shows a young teenage boy and his girlfriend going into a shelter, a nuclear fallout shelter, and he sort of entertains her with some coke and his charm, even though he looks rather like a boffin with his glasses. Anyway, it's a gorgeous, punchy piece of music with great percussion, and Donald's crisp vocals are sublime. And there's some neat harmonica early on. Gentle lead, delicate lead work from Carlton again. What a class act he is. And as I mentioned, the video. And towards the end, we hear the harmonies and piano ooze at the outro in unison. It's about teenagers' secret meeting, as I mentioned, and it reflects the dangerous times. The Cold War, of course, is starting, and the fear of nuclear war. And there's a reference to the actress Tuesday Wilde in the lyrics, and it's also relates to the jazz of Brubeck, possibly going on in the discussion between the young boy and girl in the shelter. So to the title track, The Nightfly. Well, this is a real vibrant jazz rock number. It's very radio friendly, if nothing else. The skippy beat with zany female harmony vocals stick out in my ears anyway. A typical piano and lead guitar meshing together, and Rick Derringer is on guitar here. I remember Rick from the early 70s days when he did a solo album, All American Boy. He was a bit of a rock guitar freak in those days. Lyrically, it's about late night radio, chat station, I think, in the deep south, reference to Louisiana, where you get the combination of jazz buffs and right wingers. Next up's the Goodbye Look. The synthesizer bops its way in at the intro, and there's some wicked percussion that creates a real summery breeze mood. It's particularly impressive as the punchy harmony vocals again, and there's a xylophone sound, rhythmic, almost Caribbean. I guess it's synthesized, and that feel adds almost a touch of a reggae steel band to the sound. And then there's a lovely fret-filled lead that continues to keep you interested. It's a really nice sound. Lyrically, well, it's got to be a song about Cuba as far as I see it, post-Castro. Although some people on the internet reckon it's about Haiti and Papa Doc, and references to the movie The Comedians, released in 1967. But I think I'm favour with the Cuban influence, the changes and the effect that it had on the few Americans that remained. Last song on this album, Walk Between Rooftops. Jazz is the name of this up-tempo, fast-paced track. It's a bit stripped back, but it's got the keyboards and organ taking the lead here. Hardly any guitar. It's lyrically a simple love song about feeling in love, and the elements, the torrential rain battering down as you share those thoughts. So to summarise the Nightfly, well, for Steely Dan enthusiasts, you will definitely be satisfied with this collection. Although there was this slightly different emphasis, there were many similarities, and the atypical sound that Steely Dan delivered, particularly in the latter albums, Aya and Gajo. This album continued on that sort of trend. But I have to say, it also added a little bit of extra punch. There's an upbeat feel to the songs, much more sort of optimistic about the future, and I really enjoyed that aspect to it. There's still a tremendous link with jazz on the tracks, of course, that sort of jazz funk type beat, but nevertheless, why change a winning combination? I just want to point out to James Griffiths, if you're listening, James, that I want to first of all thank you for your interest in my channel, but secondly, I have to confess that when I was looking for the images for the Nightfly on Google, I came across a link to your video of this particular album. I will say that I had completed the audio for the album before I saw your link, but I have since listened to your review, and although we do have certain similarities, I think that reflects the fact that we want to do a good job. But there are slight differences, and the main one, of course, is that you don't actually see me, you only hear me. that's because I'm that much older, and I suggest that people aren't that committed to seeing me, and it also helps me to edit better, and you're probably much more capable of doing on-the-fly videos. But thanks once again. Your video of the Nightfly I found very interesting, and there were aspects to it that I was unfamiliar with, and I will be writing a comment on your video after I've published mine. So there we have it, the 1981 debut album by Donald Fagen called The Nightfly.